building your interpersonal skills and intrapersonal skills and building skills like self-awareness. How do you deal when things go bad personally, professionally? And how do you influence and communicate with others so that you're heard? And yet they're not being taught in schools because we're teaching to the test. We are very achievement focused. There's no standardized testing of, hey, you're a good person, you got good social skills. That really comes out later on when you're an adult, which by the time it's a little too late.
Hey everyone, welcome to Business Unchained, where entrepreneurs and business owners come together to power up on their journey to greatness.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for any financial decisions. Clients of Greenridge Wealth Planning may maintain positions in any securities discussed in this podcast.
Today, I have a special guest. She launched her products out of the Harvard Innovation Lab. She's a mother of three and a teacher at UC Irvine. She's been featured in Forbes, Insider, CNBC, TEDx, Harvard Alumni Entrepreneurs. And what I love about what she's doing is I think it really touches an emotional chord for almost any parent that has a kid in this day and age and the things that we've been going through. Today, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Jenny Wu.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Bobby. It's great to be here, and call me Jenny.
And, one of the things that when I was watching your TEDx, I could totally relate to everything that you were saying as a dad of three, even though most of the message was being spoken to mothers and having to deal with, with what the future looks like in the workplace after having worked so hard to get to where you were. And then, really what you had to deal with in terms of finding your path along the way. And the fact that you're an entrepreneur just adds a little special, I think, juice to this because this is a show about entrepreneurialism. But first, listen, you do your intro. I would love to hear your story from your mouth, who you are, how you got to where you are.
Sure. Well, Bobby, I just have to say, you're absolutely right. And, sort of the things that we're talking about, I've been talking about, and this emotional roller coaster doesn't just have to do with moms, but really moms and dads. And this day and age, parents really spend so much more time compared to decades before with their kids. But yet, like you said, right, being an entrepreneur, being a parent, we talked about the guilt, the imposter syndrome, the second guesses, anxiety, and all that just slew of emotional roller coaster and never ends for moms and dads. So my story, honestly, I never imagined myself doing what I'm doing right now, which is the founder CEO of Mind, Brain, Emotion. And I work with really kids and adults and what I call helping them to build the essential human skills, especially this day and age and the age of AI. So human skills like emotional intelligence, critical thinking skills, social skills, being a good person, right? Inclusion skills, all that good stuff. And where I didn't see myself go into was really in this element of working with kids, because I started my career working with adults. That was like my sweet spot, people who can cognitively understand what I'm saying. And so I worked in human capital consulting at Deloitte with Fortune 500 companies around, executive coaching, change management, communication, leadership development. But it really,
big
kids who also throw tantrums.
That's right.
Yeah. So I guess in that sense, that really sort of encouraged me to actually pivot. And I've done a lot of pivot in my career. So I like to say I worked with, from toddlers to twilight years. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what I find is super interesting was, the comment that you had made in terms of how things have just changed. I mean, when I grew up and you grew up, and I'm not sure what your family dynamic was, but my mother and father were not helicopter parents. They didn't help pave the way, so to speak. I mean, it was more the element of children should be seen and not heard. And I know that dynamic has changed dramatically through generations. I don't know how things were when you grew up, but I didn't learn that. To me, this is all information that I'm trying to learn and digest in the game time decisions I'm making.
Yeah. I'm with you, Bobby. Okay. Oh my gosh. That's a whole nother episode and my upbringing. I grew up with with kids, not seeing but not heard, but in my case, actually not even seeing. So I grew up without my parents for 5 years, between 5 and 10, and then reunited with them and, sort of came over to the United States. I'm Asian from China. And so it was just not knowing a word of even alphabet and seeing these two supposed parents for the very first time who are kind of, emotionally immature, I would say. So I didn't really have good role modeling. And, it was really, that's when I realized, oh my gosh, these, I call it coping superpowers, are so incredibly important in building resilience and making the difference between, when you have two people in the same circumstances, right? You always wonder, how come this person is thriving and the other person is not?
I mean, they even say that most successful people have some sort of childhood trauma. I mean, I'm sure that was looked at in a through a certain lens to get that information. But the coping mechanisms, exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. And, we can even go into a tangent on that, right? As parents, we're like, oh my gosh, our kids are so entitled. They have it so good. How do we create that type of, in some ways, adversity to get them, So just want to demystify that. Do not throw your kids out on the street, just to toughen them up, right? So research, actually, one of the biggest anchor point to really determining who is the thrivers in the face of adversity is actually the element or the ingredient of supportive relationships. So in my case, it was actually my teacher and my maternal grandmother. So definitely.
And was that who you grew up with, your maternal grandparents or grandmother?
Exactly. She was a strong female, outspoken role model. And I looked up to her so much. And so I would just say to, the parents who are listening, and even really just entrepreneurs in general, right, to hang in there when the road feels so lonely and scary and impossible. And you really need your village. And when I say village, it doesn't have to be a lot of people, but you really need that relationship. It could be a partner, a friend, a mentor to just help you stay on track and keep going.
So, you say village, and that's the common saying, right? It takes a village to raise a family. It takes a village to build a business. I feel like that village has also changed from generation to generation, where we've become more spread out as families. We're less reliant on one another. What are you seeing in terms of how do you create that anchor when that seems to be a little bit disrupted from the norm?
The norm has certainly shifted. And that's why we are in this epidemic of loneliness and isolation. Alarm was sounded by the US Surgeon General, I think a couple of years ago. It was originally in the workplace, then it's in general. And then we have the teenagers experiencing that, partly because of social media and just the way we communicate. What do we do about it, right? So it really is also about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. So you have to reach out. And I'm not saying a Twitter-like or X-like type of text. It's the face-to-face human connection. And granted, just like finding mentors or finding like-minded people, you're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs, right? Before you get to someone, you're like, vibe.
You're my people.
Yeah. You're my people, right? You're my tribe, right? And so level set your expectations, but it's about never stop trying, just don't feel so jaded, right? And just get yourself out there. And it's not so much even networking or having that agenda, but it's really having this curiosity mindset of understanding, how other people are dealing with maybe similar issues and being non-judgmental. But what I've found is that, we are experiencing an emotional recession. We don't quite know how to talk to each other anymore.
So do you see a lot of that? Because I see this with a lot of the peers in town, and I've talked to a lot of parents that are in their own towns, and I have clients where we have these conversations about family, and it seems to be a common thread where the level of competition is so high. And it's almost as though we as parents, and I don't know if it's which agenda you kind of follow. Is it the agenda that your kid just has to be the best, so they're in every sport, for every training, for every season, twice a day? Or is it because you're trying to keep them off of social media because they don't really know how to keep themselves busy, but they should be learning how to keep themselves busy? I think we're in this like vicious cycle. How the hell do we get out of it?
Yeah, it's, that's the $1 million question that we're trying to solve, because when we say it takes a village, it also, because of this village that everybody is running around in this vicious cycle, that who the hell is going to be able to break that, right? How do you even move the needle when everybody's doing the same thing? And so like power of one, like, it doesn't do much, right? And so you end up feeling like I have to set my boundaries, but how do I even do that when your kid is saying so-and-so from school is on social media or is doing this and that, or that parent is, putting the kid in club sport year round, multiple things. And you're like, am I doing enough for my kid? That's the type of like anxiety, insecurity, and feeling inferior that we're all really dealing with. So what we've been, trying to solve is then we're like, okay, I got to do more. I got to do what he's doing because, keeping up with these digital Joneses now, even, offline, online.
Oh, I like that. The digital Joneses.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So I was like, I just wrote an article on CNBC about this. What do you do to become an emotionally intelligent parent to be able to combat that type of social anxiety that you're feeling, that you're trying to tell your kid to not experience in terms of peer pressure, right? So it is all about boundaries, honestly. And it's about keeping it tight as a family, understanding, going back to your values, right? What do you value the most? And, again, in entrepreneurship, it is also about what do you value the most? Because one of the things I see people failing is always chasing that shiny object, right? The latest trend or the latest, like this person is saying this, I need to do it this way, and trying to, get all the features in your product or services, right? So it's really honestly very similar.
Yeah. And that, that leaches over into your regular life. It leaches over to how you communicate with customers or clients. If you're running a business, it leaches into your peer group. If you're in work and you're trying to, to stay relevant or ahead of everybody. So I completely hear that. What were some of the driving factors that led you through where you were to where you are today? I mean, what were the elements that were going on where you were like, I can address this, or I need to address this?
Yeah. So there is a few things. One is circumstantial, where it's completely unpredictable. But the other ones within control wise is that, I've always been an entrepreneur. I was that kid, when I came over, didn't know the English, but I was selling door to door, like in my broken English with this like crocheted blanket that was just not even high quality.
That's awesome.
But I just felt so compelled to just do that, something in me. And I was the one who, sold like DIY jewelry on the playground. It was just fun for me. I loved selling, which is really honestly convincing people to shift their mindset or shift their view of thinking to think, oh, this is beneficial for me. And so with that, I've always wanted to motivate people in some way. So I also worked as a personal fitness trainer. I wanted to motivate them to, achieve like the vision they had for their body and mind-body connection. And, I just really enjoyed making people happy, honestly. And so that's always ingrained in me. And so that's why,
well, and a lot of that is that personal connection, right? You're seeing people
Exactly.
face to face and you're having that personal connection.
For me, and as any entrepreneurs, I think you need to know your sweet spot and what really drives me at you. And so for me, it was the people, the interaction connection with people. And so I, despite all the pivots, people are sort of my products. I work with people and motivating and getting them to achieve their best. And so that hasn't really changed, even though I made so many pivots. And circumstantially, which is what I didn't see coming, was becoming a parent. So kind of relatively earlier on in my career, because I had just gotten an MBA from Berkeley. And then it's like, I think it was like 5 months later, bam, I'm pregnant, and
Perfect timing.
Yeah, just the perfect timing, right? And you look around, your peers
I didn't work this hard for nothing. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And then of course, as a parent, like before that, you're like, okay, I can make it work-life balance, harmony, whatever, but when you actually become a parent, you're like, crap, like I can't engage. This is really hard, and we were up in the Silicon Valley area and all of my friends were, climbing the corporate ladder and the entrepreneurial, venture. And here I am like with a baby and I'm like, how do you do this? And so that,
which is probably harder than climbing the corporate ladder, is climbing the mountain of being a parent and dealing with children, especially that early on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was actually at Cisco Systems in a 3-year leadership rotational program. And so I was in this like full on like leadership trajectory, but I couldn't engage. And so, that circumstances kind of I just didn't see
that
it
must have
coming.
been hard for you.
It was really hard. And so I kind of stayed in. I had an amazing, bosses. And so ended up negotiating. And so at that time, that was like 2009, 2010, I ended up working part-time and then I worked remotely. I mean, it's unheard of at that time. They were supportive, but then it's like, bam, we're like, okay, our kid needs a sibling. Let's two and done. And then it was a surprise of having twins, and I'm like, what is happening? And like, honestly, like the chances of having twins for Asians are like the lowest of the low. And I have no twins in my family that I'm aware of.
Well, this is the test for you. We need to make sure that we put you in this pressure cooker as much as possible. So we throw you into MBAs, we throw you into grad schools, we throw you into parenthood, and then we throw you twins. I mean, that's just kind of life, right?
So yeah, and they were preemie twins. So one weighed less than 3 pounds, the other initially couldn't breathe on his own. And so because of that, I was forced, also honestly, because I didn't have a great childhood. So it was kind of like my way of like, I need to be there for my kids. They're number one.
And I think that a lot of us, we feel the same way. We maybe not didn't have the support structure as kids that we would have liked. We try to give what's better life to our kids. And what in that whole, I guess, experience turned you to your current business where you created, this system? What happened in your life where you were like, this is an opportunity, and I know exactly how I want to approach it.
Yeah, absolutely. So many iterations, right? But the combination of really my experience professionally and personally, and this really, just for people to know, this is really building your interpersonal skills and intrapersonal skills and building skills like self-awareness. How do you deal when things go bad personally, professionally? And how do you influence, right? And communicate with others so that you're heard, but you also hear other people. And so the combination of just working with leaders, being the executive coach, doing qualitative 360 assessments, and also my own experience realizing how hard being a parent is, and also going into education. I pivoted and studied in a full-time master's program at Harvard Graduate School of Education, and really learning that, I've seen how important these skill sets are in the workplace, not just for yourself, but as a leader for those around you. Because, we've all been through toxic workplaces. We know how that feels, right? And yet they're not being taught in schools. They are just not. There's less opportunity to practice.
Why is that?
Because we're teaching to the test. We are very achievement focused. And going back to what you're saying, the standardized testing. And then also, now on a parent's plate, we got to do the extracurriculars, this and that, the hard technical skills, so to speak, right? It's just not emphasized. And there's no sort of standardized testing of, hey, you're a good person. You got good social skills. That really comes out later on when you're an adult, which by the time it's a little too late for you and those around you, right?
Which, while probably much harder to quantify, is much more important than how well you can finish up a math equation or write a dissertation on X, Y, or Z. I mean, we've got AI, we have calculators, we have, advanced computers. Again, it's that personal connection. How do you create that personal connection? And even when it's not a personal connection and we're doing it via technology, how do you then have that personal connection come through the utilization of technology? So I find it baffling that schools have not evolved from where they were 50 years ago.
Yeah, or even 100 years
Or
ago,
more.
right? Yeah, yeah. And you're right. It is hard to quantify. That's part of the reason why. And also, one thing I want to demystify for people is that these are skills. They can be practiced and applied. Whereas back in the days, we're like, okay, he's got charisma. I don't have charisma. We tend to see it more as a fixed, almost like an IQ that's fixed, right? But unlike IQ, EQ is entirely can be improved. And really work with your IQ and your personality to be able to, find the best environment where it works for you and also, push through your agenda, like whatever it might be, in your entrepreneurship path or even dating, right? Find the right mate. And so, it is sad. So that's why, when I was at Harvard, I was researching, working, studying. And so I realized, hey, there's something to it. I need to do that. And at the same time, what sort of like a little epiphany that happened to me was I was delivering this talk. They were recording it. And in between the shoots, the producer was asking me, hey, quickly, let's record something just for fun. What would you say to your kids? Something like to leave to your kids as, almost like a eulogy or, all that stuff. And I was like, I paused and I was like paralyzed because I was like, oh my God, there's so much to say, but how do I communicate that? How do I help them understand the lessons of life so that I can rest in peace knowing that they're set for life. They'll make responsible decisions and they're good people, all that stuff. And so sort of really the combination of those, along with the research I was looking into at Harvard and MIT on how our brain neurobiologically changes as kids when you are having almost like playing tennis of that back and forth conversation with the parent that protects you and changes your brain. And so many things, factors. And so that's when I realized.
When you say protects you, so go into a little bit more, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So from a language perspective, I would say, we used to think that reading to your kids is one of the best things to help them build vocabulary, build comprehension, but it's actually conversation back and forth. And research have shown to really help them understand and build language. So that and protection, meaning getting them on track and, like even from a regular standardized testing, achievement perspective. But protecting, again, also goes back to our talk when we first started about experiencing adversity, right? You build relationships through conversations, right?
Yeah.
Through being present with each other. And that's your buffer when things go bad. Who can you turn to and who's going to be there for you?
And do a lot of these also cover conflict resolution and how to deal with it when things go bad?
Yes. I do a lot of talk in workplaces around conflict resolution, right? When the teams are not really talking to each other, they don't know how to work with each other. What do you do? How do you get back to, the drawing board? And we see a lot of those today in terms of communicating across gender, generations, and culture. I mean, I work with the Gen Zs a lot as well. And there was some kind of recent stat where like 6 out of 10 employers literally just fired the Gen Zs that they hired just this year because, they just don't know how to communicate and work with them. So it transcends through so many different ages and stages and industries, right? And so, so it protects you from toxic stress, getting that promotion, right? How do they determine like your workplace trajectory and really just life in general, your life well-being and satisfaction?
So interesting point that you brought up in terms of Gen Zs. I think that we all experience life through our own lenses. And a lot of that is how we were brought up, the environment in which we grew up. Do you look at these and say, these will probably have to be evolved as generations evolve. And there's probably a little different from a Gen Z as if I were to make these for millennials or if I were to make these for Gen X's? Or do you find that they're just pretty universal, that this is something that it doesn't matter what generation you're in? These are all fundamental tools.
So there's definitely fundamental skills, right? Those human skills never change, but how do you get it to stick? How do you communicate and sort of teach people and help them understand what's in it for them. That's the part where you do need to modify depending on the generation, the
Because half the stuff
socio-cultural.
my kids say, I don't even understand what the hell they're talking about. And I try to understand because they're using lingo, and I'm sure our parents dealt with the same thing when we were growing up. Our language changed. But what it's just interesting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to really relate to them and the experiences they are going through and have gone through. And just to give you that example of what you're trying to say is, before the pandemic, I could say, when I was your age, I had to walk to school, whatever mile by myself, latchkey kid, whatever, right?
Uphill, in the snow, both ways, no shoes. Oh no, that was my parents.
Just hyperbole. Throw it in. They don't know, right? But now, we had this terrible pandemic. Now you can't really sort of brag, about it because our kids have gone through so much. They can't even go to school if they wanted to, through the snow with no shoes, right? So you just, the way you communicate and the way you're trying to get your message through will definitely, have to be shaped by their experience.
Well, and the advent of just so many kids with severe psychological issues in the terms of how they're able to cope with different things. I mean, we've got more school shootings than ever. I mean, just like you said, our kids have gone through COVID, social media, and we've all had bullies when we were growing up in different forms and fashion, but social media is a little bit more intense than what we were dealing with maybe one or two schoolyard bullies. It's a different environment. You're right. They don't have it. They've got their own adversities they've had to go through.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and that's what really makes it tough. And, again, we go back to the village, right? It really takes some structural policies and understanding just across the board for parents and for school and that homeschool partnership to really push through some of the changes.
So what does life look like for you moving forward? I mean, you've got this new system. It's the Mind, Brain, Emotion, and that's the name of your company, right? They're cards that, I'd love for you to explain a little bit how the cards work. But what is the, what is the vision for you in terms of where this product goes, where you go, where you believe your teachings can go moving forward?
Yeah. And, I joke around, this is like altruistic type of view that, when people no longer need my cards, that's when I've succeeded. And I'm sure.
So your intention is to become obsolete.
Right? That's very, which I've, said that, and everybody's like, yeah, right. You're going to be much in business. We need these skills. And we're nowhere close to it. But the honest answer is that, I really, the cards are training wheels to help us understand whether it's in the workplace. I work with Google, Accenture on stuff like this to be able to really talk to each other, name that elephant in the room and get the support you need and really work together as teams so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You want to optimize, right? And achieve with more brain power together. And then at home, the cards are used, it could be in the car for a few minutes on the dinner table or whatever with siblings, just to really talk to each other and understand each other. And, as parents, we want to get those information out from our kids of how their day went, what they really need, and we want to see progress improvement. So the cards really serve as that, and also building the social skills to know what to do when you're in a bullying situation, even as the bully or as the person being bullied. What do you do? How do you get yourself out, and how do you not escalate to the point where you're just feeling so anxious and depressed? But as far as my next steps, I think being in business for yourself, you have to understand what you can sustain. And are you, a good people manager? Because eventually, you have to grow and you have to manage people. And that's a completely different set of skills than the entrepreneur, the creator, the one who innovates and, ideates and likes to do that a lot. And me knowing myself and having just worked with so many people managers who went from individual contributors, like I know I'm the creator. I love coming up with new ideas and it never stops. It's harder for me to not think about how to make the connections and come up with new ideas and to think about. It keeps, flowing. And sometimes I'm like, can I just not think about ways of monetizing things?
Yeah.
Just leave me alone, leave myself alone. So I'm at this junction where I'm trying to figure out a little bit of, again, another pivot. Obviously, I've sort of optimized my business so that I don't really need to spend much time in it. And so I'm kind of taking a bit of a pseudo sabbatical, like that season of just reflecting and marinating. Might go into investing and potentially new things, but that's sort of where I'm at. And I'm, really just going to give myself the space and acceptance to be able to take a little bit of time and think about it.
A lot of what I've seen from you is that you're very much B2C. You're looking directly to hit parents. Have you given any thought? Are you in school systems? Have you broken into like the Montessori world? Have you tried to incorporate this into? Have you spoken to legislature? Have you tried to get this a little bit bigger than just something that parents can use? Is that on the horizon?
The interesting thing is I very much started as B2C, but I would say like almost 50% of my business are actually B2B. So yes, it is very much in 50 states, 50 plus countries. And if anything, the teachers, the districts, and the counties of education in the state have picked it up. And so it was also another thing I didn't see coming because they know how to facilitate it. They know kids need it and they realize that they need more of that in the school system. So I have spoken, at different districts, not quite through the policy level. And that is something I'm also, need to think about. But again, selling B2B versus B2C, it is a completely different
Completely different animal.
Yeah, different animal. And so
I just think, I even just think about like you said car ride with kids when you're sitting at the dinner table. How many of us go, oh, how was your day? What did you learn today? What was the most exciting thing you had? And you kind of run out of these open-ended questions. It's exciting to have a tool to where you can actually sit down and be a little bit more poignant in terms of what you're trying to get out of your kid by asking the right questions. And I don't think a lot of us have, while we may have that skill set with adults, because adults realize that there's a little bit more give and take to a relationship where kids are kind of like, good, nothing, was fun. You're like, give me more. How do I get more at?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I know I sometimes struggle with that. So
yeah, absolutely. And these cards were really made out of my own struggle, just like you, the same struggle. And so, in the moment when you're just off of work or whatever, like who has a mental space to think of like insightful questions? These cards are questions, but some of them are also exercises and skills and activities where it also helps the parents to decompress. And how cool is it that we can decompress together with our kids? It's not yet another obligation to do. And the cards are designed in that whatever card you pick, you know exactly what skill sets you're working on, like whether it's self-awareness or social skills, and then you know the level of difficulty just simply by looking at the number and the icon, the suits on the card, and they work as playing poker cards. So like as the sneaky parent, you can literally just play goldfish or poker, whatever, and have those conversations and for adults and kids.
it must have been inspiring too to have your kids engaging with you at that level to, reach a little bit deeper, no?
Yes, absolutely. They've been my cheerleader. They've seen the whole thing and they've stuffed the animals. They've been, sort of my pseudo employees. And also one of the card deck, which is the 52 essential life skills. So this is like taking care of yourself, doing your own laundry, washing the dishes, whatnot, my kids have also created YouTube videos. They're all free. The how-to videos to teach other kids and teens and how to do these things. Because we know that as parents, our kids don't really listen to us, but they love watching those unbox, videos by other kids.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. So we're kind of unboxing chores and life skills for kids.
You had mentioned something, and it's something that I often ask when we're parting ways with, with guests. And it's if you had three things to leave to your kids, whether they were materialistic in nature or they were ideas or concepts or words to live by, what would be the three things that you would leave to your kids with them not having the experience right now of having those cards? What would be three of those?
It's about advocacy. You have to be able to speak up and advocate for yourself. At the end of the day, like no one is, you can't expect anyone to do that for you. You have to be your own advocate, your own cheerleader. And then the second one is mistakes are great. They are lessons. In fact, learn from it, like never shy away from the fear of failure. That's something I preach and practice and show my kids every day.
You learn more from failures than you do from successes. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And, this is a tangent, this day and age, part of our anxiety and, mental health is because we see so many success. And, it was like just speaking about money dysmorphia to one of those publications, because it's like it's becoming a body image issue, money image issue, and so we don't see enough mistakes that people make. And, when I they one of the features showed my success, and I was like, no, we need to show mistakes. So I ended up writing all about my mistakes in another CNBC article about, just this is the reality, of it. Okay. So, and then the third thing is, honestly, kindness and gratitude are so important, because it's how to be a good human, and it's incredibly contagious. It helps other people feel better about themselves when you do an act of kindness, and it really just the same. It warms up your heart, and it's just, we talk about how do we change, how to get out of the vicious cycle. That's how, if we could each do something nice, kind, meaningful to other people, I mean, how much better would the world be?
My mother always says it's always better to give than to receive. And as a kid, I found that a little bit of a difficult concept to really digest, because I'm like, what do you mean? Presents are great. I love it. Christmas, my birthday, this is fantastic. But as I got older, it is. It's important. It's important to have that gratitude. It's important to give back. It's important to see where you are and identify where you want to be in life, not only from a success standpoint, but how do you want to be remembered? How do you want to make an impact? How do you want to, leave your footprint?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say, yes, know your values, right? And that is a core value.
I love that. So how do people find you if they're looking for you and they want to find more about your cards, your product, your TEDx, your different appearances on TV? How do they find you?
Sure. They can go to the website, mindbrainemotion.com, and connect with me on LinkedIn, Jenny Wu, Mind Brain Emotion, and not very active on social media, but Instagram, Mind Brain Parenting would be a good place, same as Facebook. And
That's awesome.
the free resources of the life skills, and if anyone's looking, there will be other resources alongside that, which is YouTube channel at Mind Brain Emotion.
Has that been an ongoing practice that you've had in your life? I mean, do you find that you often say, hey, I'm going to step away from this a little while. I'm going to, reset a little bit and get back into it? Is that something new that you've started to explore? Where has that been in your life?
Yeah, great question. So I've always been the type to work smart. Yes, you need to work hard, but you gotta work smart. I believe in the seasons. And so for me, there are definitely been times where I'm in that marination incubation mode where I'm less, outwardly active.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, to answer your question, I think, we all work so hard, but it's unsustainable. We need time to, come up out of the water and take a breath.
What inspired you to think that way? Was that something that your grandmother instilled in you? Is that something you learned from somebody that you looked up to, a mentor, or how did you, or was that just something you figured out along life and just said, hey, listen, this is the way I just work better?
Yeah. One of my core values is always to be playful. And, in some ways, work hard, play hard is one of those trite things you hear a lot in consulting. But for me, I really practice it. I play hard. I love having fun, and I love seeking out new adventures, new activities, both physically, mentally, emotionally, cognitively. There's no right or wrong answer. But again, it goes back to emotional intelligence, which is what I teach, is understanding what drives you, how you react, what you think in different circumstances, and then find the best type of ecosystem, the environment, the circumstances that would allow you to truly be yourself and be happy.
Yeah, I mean, that work hard, play hard has always been something that has been said over and over again. And the irony of the, the work hard, play hard is I find that I'm more work hard, play little. As much as I like to say work hard, play hard, I don't find myself playing. Over the past couple of years, I've been really trying to do some soul searching in terms of where do I find my enjoyment? What are the things that I can do to unplug, recharge?
I created the type of business I'm in to be able to afford that. Obviously, if you're in a certain industry, especially if you have brick and mortar, right, it's really, really hard to get away. And it's also really hard if you have employees, So I think from the start, you have to understand what makes you happy, what type of balance you're seeking for, even the littlest balance, just you need. And to be able to create that as you go and ideally from the start.
How do you reset or how do you find that if you're somebody who continuously is in that cycle of work, that hamster wheel of life, and they're going, I want that. I don't even know what I enjoy anymore. I don't even know what my hobbies are. I don't even know how to connect with my spouse maybe, or what are some of the things that you found successful in your journey, in your life, in your career that has helped you to connect with those things?
Yeah. I'm a workaholic too. I could just literally go inside my cave. That's actually, I've been telling my partner, what my ideal vacation is? It's just go into my cave, aka my office, and nobody bothers me. And I don't come out until 2 weeks later. You can just leave the food by the door and then I'll reemerge with a product. And that's actually what I've done with some of my products. My point is I think many of us are workaholics, and whatever minute, second of time we have free, we will put something in, right?
Yeah. Amen to that.
Yeah. So it's about self-management, which is another competency of emotional intelligence. Be patient with yourself. And, and I'm not saying you need to find your hobbies for the sake of finding hobbies. That's yet another thing you have no time to do. You feel pressured, right?
I was going to say new set of stresses, right?
Exactly. Who needs that? Honestly, play is and having fun is not, it could be unconventional, and it could be owning the fact that you just love work, which I do, right? But when you catch yourself being short with your family, being so the back of your head is so full, you have these red buttons that you're going to be people are easily pressing on you and triggering your emotion. That's when you realize, for the sake of your own health, physical health, right, too, and other people health, mental well-being around you, you gotta do something else. You gotta just give yourself a little break, because it's counterproductive to even where you're trying to achieve, right? So it's a win-win. And those moments of space, empty space, honestly, just do nothing.
Nothing.
And this is how desperate I was. I'm like you, Bobby. And so I literally bought a book that says How to Do Nothing. That's the book. That's the name of the book.
It's so difficult.
It is so difficult.
It could be just something as simple. And I think that people sometimes get caught up on, they need that hobby. They need to identify, what is it that I'm doing? And I love the fact that you basically said it really should be nothing. You should do nothing. How to do nothing is the art that you bought a book about.
Yeah. The hobby of doing nothing, right? And it could be doing nothing for an hour. Oh my gosh, that's precious in itself. So it's not about putting stress on yourself. And it could be a hobby of one time in your case, right? Or a recurring hobby. It's really honestly up to you. And you can morph and change however you want. It's not all or nothing type of mentality when it comes to starting your business. So that's the fun part.
Well, I appreciate everything that you've shared today. I think what you're doing and your journey has been is inspirational. I love the concept, and I think that there's probably so much more to your story. And I can't wait until the next chapter gets written after your sabbatical, after your next cave dive, and you come out with your new product. I'm super pumped, and hopefully our listeners are going to come over to your site, and they'll get a little bit better of a taste of what the product is, how they can use it in their own families, because I think that we all need this as parents, a way to connect to our kids in a deeper way. And when we really want to give more to our kids, it has to be emotionally, it has to be in the form of time. It can't be in the form of monetary gifts, or like you said, the lawnmower, a lawnmower paving the way for their successes. It has to be helping them get those coping mechanisms, helping them to develop those interpersonal skills, and building their EQ so that this way they can be successful on their own right and not just off of everything that you've done for them.
Yeah, absolutely. They need to be their own person. Thank you so much for having me. I love cave dive. I'm gonna have to use that.